What is up, Internet? It is Scott and Sarah. This is the Crescent Method. Thanks for tuning in. We're dressed in all black like the Omen today because we have a special message to share with you. Our MasterClass Season 2 is coming up, and we just wanted to bring on one of our students from the first session to give you a little bit of insight into what maybe our consulting and our work looks like, and just some of the benefit that can be had from doing basic math, basic functional approach to your cultivation space, and what some of the trends turn out numerically. And the guest we have today is a pretty special human. It's been quite a joy working with this, I don't want to say young man, I think we're the same age or maybe a couple years older, but nonetheless, we got a Gromy coming on who has been battling out with the living soil, working through all the trends, and just trying to find his way. And so, I think we had some really valuable learning lessons come from our next guest. And we just wanted to try and share some of that with you that are likely going through the same exact situation. So, without further ado, I guess we could introduce our guests here. So, today we got Travis, which is a medical grower that is doing living soil. And I guess without further ado, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself there, Travis?
No problem. Peace to everybody.
Welcome, welcome.
Welcome.
I guess I
Yes, good to
didn't.
have you.
Yeah, so I guess I didn't set up a dual camera with both of us, so I guess we'll just start with this one. I thought I had all
Okay.
my production together, but we're not quite there. So we'll just leave it on this one where we can see everybody, and we'll get right to it. So, I guess give us a little bit of background. What was it like for your growing journey? How has cannabis been working with you, for you, maybe a little bit against you? And what's that been like?
Um, it's been a kind of a long journey, I guess you could say. Started about in 2000 and what 7, so that's in almost 20 years, I think.
Yeah, I guess.
Nice.
So it's 10 years, 16 years. So it started out, hydroponics, rock wool, that type of thing, drain the waste. But then over the last 5 years, I made the switch into living soil. After I had got some background about just some different ways of doing things and learning about some, uh, potential um, benefits that I could get from living soil. And it started out, I guess you could say, up and down. I didn't exactly have a lot of resources. There wasn't a lot of people that was doing it, or
Mm-hmm.
at least that I knew about that was doing it, that was giving good information. And
Right.
so kind of started just by reading and following as many people as I could follow, the few that there was on Instagram, and just trying to you
Mm-hmm.
know pick their brain and maybe you know follow something that I seen that was successful.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tried a couple different ways, followed a couple different strategies, and it started out okay. I did see some success in the beginning, but then eventually it's like the soil kind of gave out of gas,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's kind of what led me to you and Sarah.
Nice, very good.
Nice.
What did you like most about doing hydroponics and drain to waste? Did you like anything about it, or you just doing what you saw?
Uh, it with the hydroponics, I guess most people love it because of the control. You can control all the inputs. You can kind of match the gas, as far as ppms to drive the yield and things like that. Um, I guess that's probably the main thing, and then also though, when that's all I mean,
Yeah.
it's that was pretty much standard operating procedure.
No doubt.
Where I started at, where I ended up at, and so because of that, you don't really get to see the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
You know, so uh, that was probably the main thing. The control, and but at the same time, that's really all I knew. That's all I
Right.
was surrounded by.
Yeah. I personally didn't know anybody that did organics. I came from a heavy rock wool, drained waste, automated tables, automated pH, let the spot run while you're working type deal. And there would be like a buddy in the crew that did bottled organics, but like never really saw it in person. Closest thing I came to organics was my buddy used to run Flora Nova into Fox Farms, and that was like the most organic dude. And it kind of got heckled. It's kind of funny how much crap you get by being an organic grower in a predominantly hydroponic neighborhood. But we're seeing a lot of that change. A little bit more and more, but it's an interesting dynamic. Undeniably, the people we've worked with that do living soil outproduce even the top of the top of the top of the food chain in hydroponic as far as quality, potency in a lot of ways. Returns on hash can't even touch it with hydroponics can't even touch it. But it's still kind of this interesting little thing that's almost kind of, is it real? But how did you
Yeah.
make that jump? Like what was the transition for you that made you even consider doing some organics?
Um. Well, what's funny is before I even started growing, probably about let me see, maybe about 3 years before I started growing. This is back when seeds were still in the buds or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
I had some it was some regs, but it was pretty good, and I ended up finding some seeds. So I popped them. I put them in pots, and I was trying to go organic. So I you know mixed up some potting soil, and then I took a piece of fish and stuck it down like midway through the soil, and then planted the seed on top. And I mean, those things was nice and green, healthy. I was like, wow. So I was fascinated because I was like, okay, how is this plant growing with no fertilizer? All I did was put a piece of fish in there and
Mm-hmm.
watered
Yeah.
it, or I let. And so what ended up happening was some cats ended up digging up my fish out of the pot. But I, I but because of that, I always knew that it had to be a different way to grow a plant.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So, but what ended up making me switch was it's probably when I went vegan actually,
Mm-hmm.
and I was learning about ways to grow vegetables. So I probably should be able to apply the same principle to cannabis. I just got to figure out a way because I was learning about the back to eating method with the wood chip. So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
Oh
okay, I
yeah.
don't think I'm gonna be able to just fill my pots up with wood chips or cover them up with wood chips.
Right. Right.
I didn't really want to I didn't want to cause a problem or something like that. And so I just man, what else was it?
Yeah. Well, back to
Oh yeah,
Eden, you
yeah, yeah, yeah.
started. You
So it was
start. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
when
Mm-hmm.
when he
Oops.
yeah, no, he was just when he was just talking about the the increase in his yields, the decrease in the labor and even the cost, and then the quality going up. I mean, that's everything that you want with cannabis, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was just trying to figure out it gotta be a way to translate, a cannabis farm or a cannabis
Mm-hmm.
garden.
Yep.
And so that's what started me from that.
Well,
Nice.
nice.
So back to Eden is when you spread some
And then
wood
I had
chips
a
out and
project.
let it settle in, right? Mm-hmm. Oops. Sorry, it's getting a little wobbly there.
Yeah, I got to get my phone on the charger. Hold on.
No worries.
Sorry about that.
No worries. No worries. So essentially, what Travis was breaking down was he started out with the Back to Eden strategy after going vegan, and started just spreading wood chips out in the yard, and you know maybe got some interesting looks from the neighbors and the buddies and whatnot. And in hydroponics, you can't just take wood chips and throw it on top of the pot and call it a wrap. Like it doesn't work that way. So you at least realized that there was some other components to the factors in there. So how did that go for you? Oops. Still hooking up the
Can
charger.
you hear me?
Yep, we can
Yeah,
hear
we
you.
can
We're
hear you.
good. Yep, we got you.
Okay. It's a little static on my end. Okay. You said so. I had to go to the wood chips.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you couldn't just put wood chips on top of your hydropots. So we had to, move into a different style of cultivation.
Right.
Hmm.
Exactly. Good.
And
Yeah, I'm
so
coming.
There we go.
yeah. So uh, um, man, what did I
Maybe if
to it?
we,
Uh,
Oh,
I
have
want to
a,
geez.
say
oh,
it was
Oh, here we go.
man, it was the third.
yep.
Going out.
Yeah, there you go. We got you. Carry on. Just keep on keeping on. So you did the Coots mix, the third. Maybe, let's
Uh,
see if we stop the video. There you go. Yeah, let's do that and see if it'll bring a little more bandwidth. Hmm. Uh-oh.
You there?
Technical difficulties. All right. Technical difficulties. Here we go. Travis, if you can hear us out there. Oh, he's going to sign back on. All right. So we're going to clip this part out for the replay. But for those of you that are joining on the replay, essentially what Travis was doing is he came from hydroponics and moved into the Coots mix, did the third. And that led to about a 5-year journey, which has been quite the bumpy road, which hopefully we'll get him right back on here and retry that story. Sometimes streaming through the internet's a little bit complicated. What we were hoping to accomplish today was get a little bit of backstory and go over some of the soil test results. So we'll give Travis a little bit to try and jump back on. Live streaming is always fairly complicated.
Yeah.
So nonetheless, maybe we can go to some comments. What are you guys smoking out there? Just got Death Star back. That's what's up. That's
Nice.
what's up. Death Star is always a stunner. Always a winner. Exactly. Tech on the fly. That is what we're going with right now. And this is just live. This is like running the Super Bowl. We got a trailer and a truck, and we got a truck down with a little bit of. So that's okay. Well, thanks for tuning in.
Thank
This
you.
is a
Thank
fantastic
you.
story.
Yes.
So if anybody can hang on, hopefully he'll jump back in with the exactly the old Cornell mix. So when Travis came on, maybe we can kind of go over some of his soil test results here. We'll drop this guy down and shrink her in, and bring the screen share back. There we go. So essentially what happened is he moved to the Coots mix, and through several years of cultivation kind of ended up at these numbers. So while we're waiting for him to come back on, I'll go over some of these soil test results. So essentially here we got an exchange capacity of 9.35, which in my personal opinion, in order to have good results with living soil, you need to have at least an 18 to 20 here. Some of the soils come off the assembly line around a 9, 10, or 11, and they're called water only. Doesn't necessarily cut the mustard. And especially after a few harvest cycles, it really starts to drain down on that nutrient supply. And that's when things start to get really haywire. Moving on down, we got a 7.5 pH. I guess I could zoom in a little bit, get a little sharper image. So as the nutrients start to become imbalanced, the pH starts to wander. And so in this situation, magnesium starts to climb, and it's a double positive and starts to increase the pH of the soil. We have a 23 on the organic matter percentage, which is suitable, but should probably start considering bumping that up with a little bit of compost. Where it starts to get really interesting is in the balance between calcium, magnesium, and potassium. And true to type, straight on board, when you're following the standard third Coots mix, you're going to end up extremely deficient in calcium, too high in magnesium, and likely too high in potassium. And so that's kind of what's happening here. We have almost the same amount of potassium as we do as calcium. And if we scroll down to the base saturation, which is kind of the most important component of this type of soil test, you really want to see somewhere between 68 and 72, sometimes 74% on this base saturation. So this is going to determine everything about the characteristics of that soil. So once you start to get down to less than 68%, you're just completely no way you're going to overcome that calcium deficiency. So here in this situation, we're down below 50. Neil Kinsey would say that below 60%, you can't even increase the calcium in that soil with gypsum because the sulfur is going to dislodge the calcium from that soil. Dead true to the Coots Tech, you're going to end up way too high on magnesium. Magnesium is a quality and yield killer in cannabis, so you need to make sure that you're managing calcium and not over applying magnesium, which is pretty standard. And all these numbers are interrelated, so when calcium is not there pulling the weight, you're going to be too high in the magnesium potassium because these numbers are interrelated, and if one goes down, the others start to go up. So pretty standard for people that have been doing the no-till strategy for a while. You end up well below 65% calcium, well over the 12 to 14% magnesium, and well over the 4 to 7% potassium. Moving down to some of the trace minerals, we're doing all right on boron. Still could probably increase that. Iron is over 100 parts per million, so that's good to see. And manganese is well below half of iron. And so when potassium gets high and manganese gets low, the plant doesn't have the ability to control that luxury consumption of potassium, and it just goes right up into the plant uncontrolled. So you end up with a situation where you don't have near the adequate calcium to fill all of those cells with the appropriate amount of calcium to make rigid cells with integrity. You don't have near enough manganese, so the potassium that's already in excess just gets sucked up like an electrolyte into those cells. And the plant will choose potassium in the absence of calcium when it's deficient. And I mean, just honestly, all hell starts to break loose there. So, this is kind of where it starts to get problematic. There's a question here about the AA 8.2 test. So this is where I kind of wander pretty significantly from other advisors in the industry in that I don't dictate the test based on the pH. I dictate the test based on the quantity of calcium. So in the case of the AA 8.2 test, where they use a different extraction agent and they do an acetic acid, typically they pH it to 8.2. You can have the lab pH it to really anything you want. And typically what that does is it helps more correctly reflect the quantity of calcium in that soil when the calcium levels are very high. Let me just do this real quick. So the only time that, there it goes.
There we go.
Yeah, see, exactly. So the only time that I do the AA 8.2 test is when the calcium is well over 5,000 parts per million. So it looks like we got our guest back, so we're going to drop our guest here. Whoops. Covered myself up. And we got Travis, are you out there? Oh, let's add him, right? Let's see, we got to do that. There we go. All right, I think we got you back.
Okay, you hear me?
Yes, you're loud and clear now. Thank you. Welcome back. I was
Cool,
just
cool.
giving a little rundown of the basic characteristics of your soil test and giving a little bit of the basic background of what you've been kind of experiencing. And so, what I caught everybody up to was that you had been doing the third, the old Cornell mix, doing the living soil, doing the standard deal, and things, started to get a little bit wonky. And so I was just taking a minute to allow you to recoup, and I was just kind of going over the numbers. So I guess maybe start us off where, how was that journey from, moving to this third mix, and like, did it ever perform well, or was it always a little squirrely?
Yeah, Yeah. So the first out of the gate in the beginning, it didn't go good. I
Hmm.
started out in 5 gallon plastic pots, and they basically was waterlogged. So I know they was super anaerobic, probably.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
like they stayed soaked for like 2 months. I mean, that wasn't
Hmm.
like
Oh,
I didn't switch like completely like everything because I was still experimenting.
Right.
So I had like a small room just so I could test it out, but they didn't go good at all. So I upgraded to the 15-gallon air pots.
Mm.
okay.
And so what happened was kind of is the beginning of why I like made that decision that I was like eventually I was going to do this full time.
Hmm.
So all of those plants that was in that 5 gallon pots, they all had like super russets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I killed all of them. I took one and I planted it in the I did a new mix of the third, and this time I added amendments. The first time I didn't. So I got the standard builder soil amendments.
Hmm.
Actually, I used the wrong one. I used the ones for cocoa. I bought the wrong ones, but I used I used them anyway. They told me I could use it. It'd be good. So
Yeah.
I used that, and the plant completely recovered. Like
Nice.
I didn't I didn't have to spray for rust. I didn't have to do nothing. It completely recovered, and it was the best plant in the room.
Nice. Just going
So
up in container size.
just going up in container size,
Hmm.
and I gotta I improved a little bit from the first time. I got some books that I could read, and
Hmm.
found somebody on Instagram that was talking about it. Found a couple YouTube videos. It was tough to find information in the beginning, though. It
Yeah.
was tough.
Yeah.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but I kind of worked my way through it. But that was like profound, like to see that plant recover and not have no effects from the mites. So I
Right.
knew
Nice.
something was up. Um, and so what I did was I bought like 14 more of those AirPods to see, I figured that if I just did the exact same thing, I get the exact same results.
Right.
So I did, and I got better results. Because
Interesting.
this time the plants that I put in there, they was healthy instead of being sick. So they were
Okay.
Right.
healthy clones, and I think I foliar fed them aloe, the whole veg too. And the last one didn't get that. So this time, um, probably like a 30% increase in the yield, like
Wow.
per plant. And so, I ran half of the room, hydroponics, half the room, living soil. And then eventually, I switched over. And then what happened was probably right when that soil was starting to get like kind of wacky, I ended up ordering new. I just redid everything new. So
Yeah.
I kind of dodged that bullet. And
Mm.
so, and those next two crops came out pretty good.
Nice.
And then all hell broke loose. And it's been an uphill battle ever since. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's crazy about the no-till, just the entire group, not singling out any specific trend, but you know, I believe you were doing well with hydroponics and still saw that there was a improvement in quality, and pretty much everyone has an improvement in quality, but usually after that first run, it starts to get haywire. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of that has to do with the trace minerals. The trace minerals are completely neglected in most of the living soil, no-till, whatever you want to attribute it to it, super soil, Coots Tech, build a soil, whatever. Most of the trace minerals are largely ignored. And then the balance of those minerals gets a little bit wild. So from that point, it just was pretty much, I mean, we've had this conversation with your entire journey, and so I'm just in awe of your determination to not fold from this
Yeah.
path, my man. Holy shit!
No, no,
Like,
no, no, no.
I mean, so you had like that glimmer of hope that this could be the way, and then pretty much got your teeth kicked in for several years, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was
About, yeah. I mean, like I say, in the beginning, I kind of stumbled onto a few good crops, and
Hmm.
it's I guess it worked against you and for you. But I wish
Yeah.
I kind of wish I would have failed out the gate.
Right.
you know,
Instead
but
of
it didn't work out that way. So, but
yeah.
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
yeah, nah, I I understood when I was watching the YouTube videos when y'all was talking, like
Hmm.
before I even started working with y'all. I
Yeah.
understood, the numbers that y'all was showing, and I went and read, you know, like that what's that thing that Dr. Elaine paper,
Oh
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Uh-huh.
The
the
ecological
monograph.
monograph. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
So I can understand what I was reading, so I
Hmm.
knew that if y'all could do half of what y'all said y'all could do, y'all was gonna help me. So
Nice.
you know, so yeah, and then
Exactly. Ecological succession. So let's
that's it.
let's let's get
Yeah.
into these numbers a little bit. We'll kind of go over these and kind of explain where I think some of the problems were. So I touched on a little bit that we've got an exchange capacity of 9.3 in this first BR1, which is a little bit below what I would say is adequate nutrient to have a good harvest. The real issue was down here in this base saturation where it was 49.86 for calcium, which is well below the desirable ranges. And in my opinion, a lot of the russet mites, whether caused by or a symptom of extreme calcium deficiency. So the traditional signs of an extreme calcium deficiency is exactly like russet damage. You start to have that newest growth die off. You have leaf deformation, sometimes a lightning, which tends to have people going for CalMag. On top of that, we got almost 25% base saturation for magnesium, which is going to further kill your yield and the potency and quality. So that's kind of a rough shape. If we move to the saturated paste for that same BR1, pH is a little bit high, 7.5. We're supposed to have somewhere between 800 and 1500 for the soluble salts. We had 213, so not near enough nutrients that those plants could access. So we have an extreme calcium deficiency and nowhere near the nutritional, um, the volume of nutrients that that plant needs to really thrive. When you come down to this percent saturation, this is where it really starts to tell the story. You only got 13% for calcium, which this should be 60. So potassium and calcium is now inversed, which is an extremely common pattern in a lot of the living soil because people are pounding magnesium, potassium products. They're not getting the calcium in there. If they are, they're most often doing oyster shell, which is nowhere near soluble enough to make any sort of impact onto this saturated paste test. Furthermore, sodium's at 23 and calcium's at 13, so sodium and potassium are racing into those roots where calcium doesn't have a chance. Um, so, what do you give us a little bit of background on this BR1? This was 30-gallon pots you had there?
Yep, yep. That was so that was a room that they got amended with what was it?
I think you did a little oyster
Rock-
shell. All right.
I don't think they got they got that they got the lime.
Hmm.
Remember I told you that I
Yeah.
used what was it? That horticultural lime.
There you go. Yep.
I think it's
Yep.
called, yeah. So
Yep.
they got that because I thought I was having a pH problem. I mean I
Mm-hmm.
was, but it's not for the reason I thought I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So.
so
Mhm.
mhm.
Yeah. No. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
So that's why I added the the
Mm-hmm.
the lime and just rock dust,
Yeah.
a glacial rock dust,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all they got, and that was problems out of the gate. Yeah,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
Yeah. This
didn't
whole.
they,
Mhm. Sorry.
they
Go ahead.
didn't they didn't stretch like really in veg at all.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. This trend to just do rock dust is not a real thing. It's helpful to have a little bit of rock dust, but nowhere near the mineral nutrition to have success.
Exactly.
Um, so he made a good decision. There's a question about what would you use instead of oyster shell. I would still use oyster shell. You just also need some soluble form of calcium so that the plants can have access to it. So oyster shell is a good choice. I was just more saying that predominantly those in the living soil community are typically, if they're adding any calcium at all, are only doing oyster shell. And so it's not going to get it to you. At least Travis made a good decision with the high calcium lime, which is going to typically be a soluble form of calcium, but still we got such a hill to overcome that we're not going to get into that and so or not get into those desirable ratios. So when Travis got into the master class and we started dialing down some of this, these soil tests in this type of situation where it's this extreme, I do feel it's valuable to break that soil down, throw it away, heavily amend it, get it out of the pots. And so that's what Travis did, which I'd say 9.8 out of 10 farmers are going to not do that. And so Travis jumped right in and was like, what do we got to do to get this shit right? And immediately jumped in, dumping that soil on the ground, which is no small feat.
Yeah.
Um, you know.
It's more soil than you think it is.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's the one. It's the upside and the downside of living soil. You do it once and do it right, and it works well. But man, if it's wrong, you're literally moving truckloads of stuff out of a back bedroom, and it's just like, that's way more than even 100 2-gallon pots, I guess. So, because even 100 2-gallon pots in a back bedroom is only 2 cubic yards, where if you got like a back bedroom full of 30s, that's like 3.5 cubic yards. It's a lot of heavy ass rock dust laden soil to go break it down. And so at least on your other one here, so we got the what was this other one, SR8, which was another room. I don't know if it was younger or whatnot, but at least in it's a better shape. So we got almost a 17 for the exchange capacity, still a little bit high on the pH, which what I was jumping in with earlier is I think the biggest issue for people coming from other techniques into living soil is you were correct that pH was off, but it's much more complicated than just trying to go up with some calcium. And so pH was already high. You are correctly identifying that it's a pH issue, but it's mostly a tremendous imbalance of what nutrients are there, which does have a downstream effect on pH. And I think where people really get tripped up in this transition from other techniques to living soil is that they then try to drive pH up and down, which doesn't really get you to the goal. So at least this SR8, I think, was performing a little bit better. We're closer to the goal at 68% calcium, almost 20% magnesium, is a little bit high, but pretty par for the course for this type of cultivation. And when we scroll down to the saturated paste test, again, we're only at 230 for soluble salts, which is nowhere near adequate if you are literally trying to just water these plants. And again, carrying the same trend, calcium is at 21%, which is well below the value. Potassium is at 33%, which is well over, and it's higher than calcium, so now it's out competing. Sodium, again, is also out competing calcium, and there's just no way you are going to get calcium into this plant. And under those conditions, that's how you get russet mites. It's pretty true to type, So what was that like trying to break down that soil and get it amended?
I mean, besides the physical
Yeah.
work that you got to put into it, it was. I mean, I had amended before, and I mean, like I said, I was determined to get it done. It didn't really matter. I knew, from amending soils before, um, just not knowing, what I was doing, but I saw the effect of amending the soil. So because in the beginning I started out, it was the water only thing.
Right, right.
I didn't really take account that the plants was going to be pulling from that soil. And so eventually, the soil being unbalanced and not getting, you know, um, nutrients, that's like you said, it was recipe for russets and,
Yeah.
you know, reduced yield and everything else that come with that.
Yeah.
Calcium is the basis of all cells, and so they call it the king of nutrients. the plant wants to build every one of those cells with calcium, and in the absence of that, it uses potassium and nitrogen, which are electrolytes, which can fill that cell, but it makes it weak and watery and susceptible to pests. And calcium is also one of the main determinants of yield. Potassium gets attributed to the main determinant of yield, but calcium is like the size of the tire. Potassium is like the air pressure in the tire. And so if you don't have adequate calcium to build the diameter of that tire up and you cram in the potassium, you're now blowing that sidewall out, literally making it susceptible. There's a question here from Smiley about how many cycles did it take to balance out the soil, um, which we did it right away, right? I mean, that's kind of why we did that. So,
Yeah.
mathematically speaking, this SR, this first one, um, I mean, that would have taken a year and a half to correct probably
Yeah.
in a 30-gallon
Yeah,
pot. So,
yeah,
Which is why we took the route we did. Yep.
yeah. Um, in that situation, I think pretty much your only option is to break it down, amend it heavily because you can't, especially with calcium, you're stuck. You can't add gypsum because it's not going to increase. I mean, you can add gypsum, but you're going to end up getting sulfur toxicity before you get to adequate calcium. So we did use gypsum because the soluble calcium was so insanely low that we had to put some in there, but only enough to increase the sulfur to its desired target. And then we just cram that soil chock full with three other types of calcium. So we immediately radically turned that soil into the other direction. And would you say that there was a positive return on that physical labor, or how long did it take for you to see results?
yeah. So for the SR rooms, that's the parts that um, I dumped 9 of those out,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, I could see a difference.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure. I think the main thing has been it's like if you swap out a motor and you put a high performance motor in, you just can't
Yeah.
match the, you gotta get it
Yeah.
tuned and
Mm-hmm.
that type of thing. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think it's the same thing as like I just had to kind of find that balance between watering and not watering, and you know um the liquid feeds and the
Mm-hmm.
extracts. But
Yeah.
definitely it was worth the physical labor. Like it's a clear difference with especially like the quality, the smell is different. um the trichome production is higher. It's night and day from how it was
Yeah.
before. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
nice.
good to hear. And we're not magically out of the woodwork. We still got to work to get up to where the goal. And so we're not making it sound like we waved a magic wand and everything was peachy keen. But it did radically change the trajectory of that farm for sure. And we see this in our consulting work when we have a commercial farm buy into the breakdown and remix. We've seen a doubling of yields and a complete radical change of trajectory. So it sounds like you had a pretty constant russet mite pressure for several years, and then now you've gone essentially through one harvest cycle of making these radical changes. Where are you at now with some of those russets?
um yeah, I'm probably, I mean, I may have one plant right
Mm-hmm.
now that have russets, or
Mm-hmm.
that's fighting them off really. But the russet pressure pretty much gone. I don't
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah.
I don't really have to.
Yeah.
I haven't sprayed or nothing like for russets.
Mm-hmm.
Probably since like December, I think
Mm-hmm.
maybe.
Yeah.
Nice.
Nice. That's
That's
that's.
Excellent.
one of the biggest
Mhm.
things too. Is the
Yeah.
russet gone? Is Yeah.
Nice.
I think the hardest thing for people is not spraying
Yeah.
because in a biological system, that's what keeps you from the goal. Actually,
Yeah. But I
turns out.
knew that plants, like even watching the back to eating um the that documentary on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
like he don't necessarily explain it to you scientifically, but you can understand what he's saying, that the bugs don't eat his plants because of the health. So
Yeah.
it just makes sense, if you can get improve your plant health, then you shouldn't have to, you know, treat the plant for bugs.
Right.
So I understood
Nice.
that, it was just I didn't know how to get there.
Right.
And that's what got me down this kind of a rabid fan going towards his goal, because you would hear these things like, "Oh, we don't need to spray for bugs." Literally every single person I know had some level of pest management strategy. Nobody I grew up around, coming up the ranks, sprayed near as much what people do now. Like, this shit's insane in my opinion. This 2 3 times a week bananas, but they were not just whimsically hoping that nothing would happen. They did take a mold strategy, they did take a pest strategy, but usually it was one hit, one of each during a harvest cycle. That was it. And so, people say these things of like no pests and we don't need to do this, but if you follow the readily accessible advice to like a, average Joe level farmer, that information doesn't get you to pest free actually. And most of it is pretty certain that you will battle tremendous pests. And I think that's where we sound like pure loony bins, because we do talk about it and try to teach people to it. But here in this situation, Travis absolutely navigated himself into a much better position by changing mineral chemistry, inoculating with biology, and then making a couple core changes. And so we're using those liquid feeds to support the plant while mineral chemistry comes into line. I commend him for making that tremendous leap to dump all that dirt on the ground. I mean, you did it immediately. Like, you did it
Yeah.
shockingly fast, actually,
Yeah.
which was, I'm serious. I have to commend you, man. It's like we spend many harvest cycles trying to convince farmers to make radical change sometimes, and you have got no hesitation in your leap. I love how you just jump right out of the airplane.
Yeah.
And,
I went,
you know,
I watched one Dr. Sabi video, and
oh, yeah,
I went vegan a week later. So
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
when shit makes sense, it makes sense. That's just
hmm
what it is.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
One
hmm
thing that
Yes.
could be kind of interesting is, there's been a biological journey as well. We didn't queue up the biological reports from this project, but there was a radical understanding and change in the way you approach the biology. Do you and Sarah want to kind of touch on that a little bit?
Oh yeah, I mean, you had started with some compost that wasn't from us, but was biologically complete in the beginning, and then we just kind of guided you, using that compost, how often to use it with what you were going on, what you had going on, and how often you needed to actually do it to achieve the goal. So, I mean, I think you're one of those students that just takes to it like a fish to water, and
Yeah.
you just you're very proactive in what you do, and you're actually doing the labs to learn the process so that you can actually learn how to do this as like immediately, instead of trying to hem and haw and is it or is it not, you're really doing the labs to do it. So yeah. I just commend you on that. So I don't know what you learned on the biology part, if you want to elaborate on that.
I learned that it's not as easy as I thought it was
Yeah.
to maintain, the biology. Like I say, my situation, I was just telling you about this, like um, the cooling system that I use, it pulls a lot of that moisture out of the air. So it's a, you got to find that balance between feeding and but not going anaerobic from overfeeding.
Right.
And so, like, I didn't know about, I didn't know what that meant to go anaerobic or that type of thing. So, my strategies was, I just probably fed it like, you would feed I don't even know if you would feed an outside plant like that. But I mean, it was a
Right.
lot of drenching, a lot of soil drenching. It was almost like borderline hydroponic, watering, like
Right.
just doing what you used to, kind of like. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
I didn't really consider like a strategy to maintain the biology until I took the first class. And so yeah, it's like I said, you got the mulch layer you got to think about, you got the moisture you got to think about, you got to you got to think about what it is that watering in. You have to think about the water that you watering with.
Mm-hmm.
Everything like y'all say, everything that you do affect biology. So
Yeah.
um it's just knowing, being able to know, or you know getting a bio essay, or doing it yourself, being able to know like where you at with the numbers, and
Hmm.
If are in rusted territory or
Right.
in a rugged territory. And so that's probably been the biggest thing is just being mindful of all of those different things.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Helping the numbers really help you dial it in and go, okay, retune that, recalibrate
Yeah,
what you're going on, what you got, what you're seeing
yeah.
on the ground,
Hmm.
based on what the
Because
numbers are saying.
because everything if you don't know, what the numbers say, then everything you're doing is like you just shooting in the dark, really.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
gotta be able to see real time what's going on. Otherwise, you know, you you could easily put too much of something or not enough of something. So, and that's the same thing with the biology. You don't you I you probably could put too much compost extract on. Like I'm guessing, right? If you could overwater it in too much and
Um,
cause that, or maybe not.
well, I mean, possibly. I
Hmm.
don't. It's hard to go too much on the extract.
Hmm.
It's what we end up seeing is a lot of sediment buildup on the top, which ends up
Yeah.
working against you as far as breathability
Hmm.
goes sometimes. So
Okay.
But in your situation, being a little bit more aggressive helped that transition.
yeah.
So it's all context dependent. So this is the other obstacle that I'm hearing is your room was previously set up for drain to waste hydro, and your cooling system is pulling that water through the plants, which does have a positive effect on yield. And in the context of living soil, if we're not maintaining adequate moisture in that root zone, then nutrient cycling is going to stop and yield's going to go down. So as long as moisture can be maintained in that pot, that phenomenon will still benefit you. But in this situation, that learning curve of adequate moisture was one of the more longer drawn out things that people tend to figure out. And so in your situation, you really went for it with the compost extracts, which is perfectly fine, and saw some pretty good benefits there. Visually speaking, what would you say was the biggest changes you saw once you started getting actually biologically complete compost into those pots?
Um, like the plant health was the biggest change. Like the thickness of the leaves, the thickness of the branches, the stalks, the vigor. Like it's a noticeable difference. And the the growth, it's like a growth accelerant. It's like it speed them
Mm-hmm.
up or something. Like
Yeah.
I would say that to the size of them. It's like giving them steroids or something. It's almost to compare it to. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Giving them
Nice.
300 million years of evolution.
You're
yeah,
like,
So
yes,
yeah,
please, give me
yeah,
another.
some ancient hydro as we call that.
yeah.
Um, right on. Has there been anything that's been overly difficult for you, or making the transition to like really jumping in there? Is it all fairly easy for you?
Um, I would say the main thing is keeping notes, like keeping detailed notes of what you're doing, so that you can know.
Right.
You know, um, so you can kind of track what you're doing and see and compare
Yeah.
it to like the labs and kind of get a feel for
Yeah.
what's doing what. That's probably the biggest thing. Not really used to doing that too much, but
Yeah.
as far as everything else, I mean, y'all do a pretty good job explaining stuff. So it's
Nice.
it,
Thank
it,
you.
Yeah.
it's been yeah, it's been easy to follow y'all instructions.
Very cool.
Good.
And
Excellent.
everything been spot on too. So when you get bad information and bad results, once you find good information and good results, I mean, for me, I'm all in. So
Yeah.
Nice.
What was it that kept you hanging on the living soil for all that time, even still kind of maybe not meeting the results you had in the other techniques?
I knew that it could work, and I knew that um, the technique wasn't the problem. That what I was doing was the problem. So I knew the thing was I just needed to get the right information. I
Right.
knew
Yeah.
it worked. I had seen it work and had success with it.
Hmm.
It's just I realized that something was missing out of what I was getting told. That's all.
Yeah.
Calcium.
Mm.
Calcium was
Yeah,
a lot of it. I think the
yeah.
other thing too, I'd say the most unfortunate situation of this whole living soil trend is it started with this drive to move away from excessive everything really in this Masanobu Fukuoka one straw revolution, put some straw down and let nature do it. And that kind of became the badge of honor that, like, oh, I do nothing. And
Right.
we've worked with a lot of those farms that claim they only water, and they're not just watering. And I think the biggest disservice to everybody involved is the online retailers purporting that all you got to do is add water, and then the Instagram accounts that purport that, like, that's not helping anybody. I like the concept that we should do less, because if you take somebody that's struggling with bottles and you put them onto living soil and they do less, it typically is some improvement in some areas. You're probably not going to outperform the yield, but in my experience, we haven't seen a farm yet that literally just waters the soil and maintains consistent, predictable outcomes and yields that consistently pay the light bills. And so, if you're a hobbyist grower running a tent or a back bedroom that you don't got to pay the light bill on, you can go through those ebb and flows and have those experience and have the harvest that blow up on you. But pretty much everybody I know has to at least pay the light bill, or they're doing it as a medical enterprise or a commercial enterprise where you have to maintain that. So, I think we're starting to see a trend of people accepting certain levels. You're at least seeing certain people being more aggressive with the mineral chemistry. Because if you just follow the old, tried and true protocols of just water and aloe, like, you can have some success for a little bit, but that shit is guaranteed to blow up on you and fall on its face. And another thing too, like numerically speaking, I guess I'll go back to the numerics. It's a common trend to, there's always this thing that, like, we talk about remixing the soil, and because it turns into worm castings. I think that's the biggest baloney. It's not turning into worm castings. It's turning into this ratio of calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium, what makes it completely unsuitable for growing plants, and all hell breaks loose. And so understanding that that's a thing and that you need to take proactive steps. If you want to just add water, then you really need to get in the camp of doing soil tests every couple of weeks, or you're just never going to get over that hump. I still stand by there's nothing better on this planet than doing a proper soil chemistry with proper biology and, like, the organics of life ferments. I'm gonna get that shit tattooed. I'm so into it. But we got a question coming from the crowd. Do you do the fulvic aloe potassium silicate regimen as well? Have you worked that in there?
No, not yet.
Hmm.
Just the aloe and the fulvic so far.
Yeah, okay. That's good. Well, it's probably better you didn't have the ag sil because you were already potassium dominant. So you might have provided a little bit of benefit with the silica, but the aloe and the fulvic will definitely help it. And so for those that aren't familiar, that is something that comes from the no-till camp, which is extremely effective. We've been able to get rid of powdery mildew in regulated facilities with farmers that had previously been using things like Eagle 20, and that can almost be a direct swap for powdery mildew treatment. So we're kind of getting close up to the hour, which is where we like to go. So we'll see if anybody in the crowd has some questions directly for Travis. In the meantime, do you have any specific advice for anybody out there that's trying to get into this living soil or has done previous hydroponic activities and is trying to figure this out?
Uh, yeah. You know, do your research. Try not to just follow one style. Before you research more than one style. Definitely. I would definitely say, follow Scott and Sarah. They, yeah, they are pretty amazing, and they're good at what they do, and that's pretty. If you do that, you'll be all right. You
Thank
don't have
you.
to do too much, and get you
Yeah.
some of that compost. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess my advice back to the farmer is, react to good advice. I think where you had the benefit was you went through the mill. You've tried it all. And so when you were offered something that was helpful and you could see that there was a benefit, you went all in. And I think a lot of people get gun shy. And honestly, in living soil, it's hard to tell what's helping and what's hurting. In hydroponics, if your pH is off, you're going to know in a couple hours.
Right.
And it's a lot more clear to see because the variables are a little bit more limited. It's either is your media adequately saturated or not? Are you it's either a water saturation or it's an environment or it's a balance. In living soil, you got the mulch layer, you got the biological balance, you got the chemistry balance, you got how your environment, in a lot of ways, it's almost, well, I guess they're all similarly complex and dynamic and take the same amount of effort to manage. It's just there's a lot more unseen aspects of living soil, I guess we'll say. If
Yeah.
there's a problem with your reservoir, you can drop that pen in there and figure it out. In living soil, you got to send in a soil test. And I think the biggest detriment that comes along with this belief in water only and doing everything by intention is a lot of people don't do the soil test necessary to have like a really good outcome. So
But the
Yeah.
quality is worth it, wouldn't you say?
mhm,
Yeah, I mean, it's worth it. I mean, and I think that like you talked about the liquid feeds too. Like I think
mhm,
that's something else that I see a huge
yeah,
that made a huge difference was the liquid feeds.
Yep.
Like the concept of, of doing that low but balanced feeds to as the plants pull, you get to put something back.
yeah,
Um, it's like that's a game changer too. I think.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You really kind of have two strategies in living soil. You have to do regular, repeated, frequent soil tests, and then a lot of times people are correcting with sulfates, which is fine numerically. I'm a believer that sulfates is the only thing in living soil that adds flavor if you're doing this properly. So I tend to not use them very often. And also too, if you're following that strategy, you're always 2 weeks behind. In the case with Travis, we do a water test up front. We make a balanced feed that we know is correct, and we verify that it's balanced and you're correct from day one. And so you kind of get ahead of the rhythm a little bit and you're pushing them down the road with the proper balance instead of realizing 9 days later that you're missing the mark. And I think that's one of the biggest components of maintaining bag appeal, quality, yield to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So there's a question about KNF and water soluble calcium. It's very easy to make, which would be a water soluble strategy. When we analyze a water soluble calcium ferment, we often don't actually see calcium in it. One interesting thing about Korean natural farming is they don't do a lot of testing, so nobody knows that these nutrients you're claiming are not actually in the products you're using. And that's why we stick to more commercially produced products. It's not that KNF is bad, and as the climate changes, people need to figure out how to do these things. But, we've done analysis where the KNF water soluble calcium has less calcium than the Organics Alive Bloom formula, which isn't supposed to have any calcium. So, I don't know, just food for thought. And there's a question about water testing. We did do a water test um, on Travis's farm because that's how we start everything, which did get some interesting numbers, and we need to do a follow up. I think it was just kind of a fluke in the system.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, water testing is so important that if I was starting a new farm, I would do a water test first. It's your largest nutrient. If you're forced to do reverse osmosis, that can be quite the problem. So
I was doing. It's
yeah.
funny. I was doing reverse osmosis too for a
Hmm.
while because man, I don't know if I got bad information or that was my bad idea, but I was using and I saw a difference though with that crop. Like it
Hmm.
wasn't. It definitely took a hit. So
Hmm.
the only thing I changed was that water filter.
Yeah.
Mm.
And it's natural progression. Almost every single farmer that comes from another technique into living soil, it's hard to talk them out of doing RO. Um, as in our commercial work, we have worked with very large hydroponic farms, and we've taught, 180,000 square foot hydro facility how to run hydro off of the city tap water. You can certainly do it. You just have to do the analysis. And, I don't think it's all that helpful in living soil because the one downside of using RO is if you add the Organics Alive nutrients and the trace minerals, because there's nothing in that water, it plunges pH. So what we run into with farms that want to use RO is they can't get to the nutrient concentration they want before they drop below a pH they're comfortable with. So RO is kind of a last technique for us in a must do either for heavy metals or for
Some other filth and flarn.
yeah, some other filth and flarn. Usually it's toxic boron, manganese, something like that, or sodium. You can only really get sodium through RO. There's a question about amending. It says, if I amend properly at the beginning of the cycle, do I still need liquid feeds running a 3x3 bed? What would you say to that, Travis?
Do you need it? Probably not, but um, should you use it? Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Good answer.
yeah. Good answer.
It's a
well,
very good student.
well, because what you're doing is you're ensuring that the plant has a soluble amount of what it needs through all cycles. I think one thing people don't realize is, as you're building that plant, you're building a brick wall, and if those lower foundational bricks have holes in them, they're still there when you go into flower. And so it's really important to build that foundation as completely and consistently as possible so that when you get to flowering, when you can no longer do anything and those same branches and plant material are there, they're not susceptible to pests. If you build vegetative leaves that are lacking in all the nutrients, mainly calcium, they're still susceptible to pests long into flower when you can't do anything. And I don't think people realize that. That's the main reason why we do the liquid feeds. Yeah.
And then after you fully amend too, you don't want to just put all of that strain on those amendments. You want to give the biology time to break some of them down and make certain things available at the pace that it wants to. You don't want to just, it's like I said, it's like that new engine. You want to you got to break it in. You don't want to just, put all the pressure on it like that.
Very cool. Very cool.
Very good.
What
Very
do you
good.
what do you see your future with living soil? Where is it going for you? What kind of trajectory you think you're on?
Um, I mean, I don't know. I guess I could say like sky's the limit, really.
Yeah.
It's because I definitely think that it get better and better with time.
Yeah.
Especially when you like, maybe like in ground and you got a chance to work with some of those minerals that's already in the earth, and you adding biology to that and unlocking some of that. I mean, it's the
Yeah.
same minerals, but it's just different, I guess, outside. And inside you're trying to mimic what's happening outside,
Yeah.
Hmm.
and so um, that's pretty. I definitely want to get something in the ground and
Yeah.
Yeah.
see how that is, full
Yeah.
sun, that type of thing.
It's a
Nice.
trip, man. It's crazy how easy it is to grow monster plants in the full sun in the ground. It's like with the same level of nutrient, right? So essentially the same feeds and essentially the same volumes that you're giving your plants in 30-gallon pots, Sarah gave to our outdoor pots, and you get these 2-3 pound plants, no big deal. It's
Yeah.
it's a trip, man.
Right. Yeah.
Um, you know, the other thing we got to do is so now kind of the general progression of repairing this farm is we've gotten Travis out of the big deep thicks of the pest pressure. We're into minimal, controllable, quarantinable pest pressure. Now we're going to start increasing plant health. We're going to start increasing yield. Once that starts happening, now options are available to him. So we can now consider moving into a larger container like a bed, and we got to just keep stepping that thing up and eventually get him a big old house with some outdoor opportunities, which takes time. You're just going to keep laddering it up there. And the only way you're going to get there is by putting yourself in a position to have predictable outcomes. The way that you have predictable, reliable outcomes is by doing the foundational testing. So right now, Travis is in predominantly 30-gallon pots, hasn't gotten the bottomless pots yet, but we're going to get some to him and start testing those out. One thing we could probably do is start wrapping your fabric pots, because I don't think you even have the grassroots ones.
Yeah.
Um,
I
oh,
have the
you do?
Oh, you
grass.
do?
Oh,
Okay.
that's good to know. Okay, so that's good to know. That's good. And then over time, we're going to start moving up into beds and volumes and keep bumping that yield. Even in a 30-gallon pot, if you move to a large bed and do nothing else different, there's typically a good 20 to 30% yield just from the stability of that volume of soil. A lot of times in commercial farms, in identical situations to you where the soil chemistry was pretty catastrophic, you move from that really bad soil chemistry into ideal soil chemistry with a heavy reamend into a bed, and a lot of times it doubles the yield. So, you know, so we'll have to get you some of the bottomless pots, maybe stack them on top and see how that goes.
Yeah.
Are you doing clones directly into the pot? Or are you doing 2 gallons? What is your strategy
uh,
there?
directly into the pot. Um, yeah, I like they seem to like it's almost like they turn into like little bonsai trees or something. Like they grow like they grow different when they straight into the dirt. So
Hmm.
that's the way I like to do it.
Nice.
Unless
Yeah,
something off schedule though, but other than
sure.
that, I like to go clone straight to the pot.
Yeah.
Nice.
The real best advantage of a transitory 2 gallon pot is if you need to buy time in the calendar, you can. We recently just did really comprehensive calculations because now you're seeing in Michigan, which is a plant count, not a square footage license, you're starting to see people consider a commercial facility go directly into the bed, which historically has never been an option. And there's definitely some advantages and some disadvantages. The advantage would be typically the plants get healthier quicker, get to flowering size quicker. It just happens to be in your flowering space. And then in our own personal trials, we always saw significantly higher yield in those plants that went directly into the bed. It's just managing that calendar and the production in the facility gets to be the real, kind of deal.
The double Dutch.
Yeah. So what were you smoking on before we started? What are you finding you're enjoying as far as flavors right now?
That was I had some runts, some peach cobbler runts, and a banana strain. Um,
Nice.
but everything was everything was it had a different type of kick to it this time. So
Nice.
Nice.
I'm
Yeah,
looking
yeah.
forward to what's coming next.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
Good.
these next two I think will continue to add that layer of profound improvement. So
Yeah,
hopefully we can get you into outpacing what you've done with hydroponics beforehand, and get that yield up. And get the
I, I think so. Like as far as a per plant yield,
Mhm.
um, living soil by far I top my numbers in hydroponic.
Yeah. Which is actually pretty common. That's really interesting. Like a lot of times when we do a cocoa conversion, they're used to doing like 16, sometimes 24 plants per 4x4, and we try to convince them to do 4 or 6. They end up doing 12, which is still insanely uncomfortable for them, and the per plant yield definitely goes up. So, definitely some potential there. We just got to continue to refine soil chemistry. You're on a great trajectory for the biological consideration. You're getting that down. We were really impressed with your understanding this last week of being able to go to the video and listen to our advice on moisture. Even before Sarah counted the sample you sent, you already made the trajectory
Yeah.
change. Like,
You already corrected it.
yeah, man, you're
Yeah,
you're gonna be top 1% for sure,
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
So
teaching. Good teaching.
yeah,
Yes.
man. Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
yeah.
Appreciate that.
It takes both, man. Obviously,
Yeah.
we got a lot of pride in what we do and feel like we've got a great strategy, but it has to go both ways. There has to be that trust by the cultivator that we're leading you down a good direction. There has to be that, 14 to 20 day period of believing in the new trajectory change to commit to it. And I have to say, that's what, I mean, you know, I'd say you're top 3 or 5 of every farm we've worked with for commitment towards a trajectory of change. And it's just, I'm completely in awe in your ability to distill down a
Yes.
direction, distill down the confidence in the path you want to go, and straight full board.
Yeah.
I really commend you for that. And I promise you, if you're able to make it through these next 2 harvests with a smile, it will start to really blow your mind, because you clearly have the intelligence and the aptitude to apply every single aspect of what we're teaching. And you're showing that you're even getting that laid in before we even tell it to you. And that, that's a gift to us as advisors and consultants. That's why we do this.
Yep.
We've crawled through the broken glass and barbed wire and bullshit to be able to figure out what's correct, and we want to just huck it at you, and see people have success. And those conversations that we have with you, when those moments of understanding and execution and the way you're starting to put the pieces together, is the joy for us. Like,
Yep.
that is what keeps us going, and that has really been the best part of these master classes, for the most part, I think pretty much every single person in this first round of classes was of the same mindset and, got in there and just super, it was enjoyable for us to see this big leap of faith of moving away from these really intense, high cost, one on one classes to working in a group setting, which was new for us. And honestly, we stumbled a couple times on the execution trying to figure out what it is. And the refreshing part for us is everybody in that class was like, let's do this, and, we really do commend you for being a leader of that emotion and mentality in the group and maintaining that in the forum and being the first to get your soil test done, being the first to get your water. I mean, this man cannot be held back.
Just your grasp of the concepts so quickly is like, wow, really good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah.
So I think we kind of hit all the bullet points I wanted to try and do. If you've got any other last comments or anything for anybody, I think we kind of really did it.
Yeah. You have anything you want to say? End on?
Not really. I am going to be dumping out the last 15, 16 pots though. So
Okay.
got that coming down the pipe.
Very good.
But other than that, I'm excited. Just to see what the future gonna look like. To see how far we could push it to. So
Very
I'm
good.
excited.
Yeah, me too. And then in June we're gonna cruise by and say what's up. So we'll we'll swing by. But yeah, man, we much appreciated for coming on. Sometimes this stuff is uncomfortable for people to talk about. I highly commend your transparency on the obstacles and things. Do know that it's provided insane levels of value for the people that are listening, and will continue to provide value for an authentic feedback of what really kind of goes on, what it's like to move through those progressions, and to still maintain optimism for the progression. I definitely struggle with getting jaded, a little salty here and there. And if you've been watching our videos, you could probably pick out those periods when I was the saltiest. But, I do commend your ability to maintain optimism and just the light, positive attitude during, situations that folds most growers, financially, mentally, and emotionally. And you're just unbreakable, dude. I just really respect what you're doing and why you're doing it and how that affects those around you and your friends and family and children and whatnot. You really are doing very powerful stuff where you're at, and I commend you for that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
It's been a joy. Absolute pleasure to have you on with us. Thank you.
Likewise.
Yeah.
So we're looking forward to round 2 with Travis. We got some more master classes starting up. The Crescent Method Basic Training is starting up again Friday. Travis for President 2024.
Yeah.
That's funny. So we're starting again Friday at 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We still got another day for anybody who want to jump in the classes, jump on the website. Anybody in the classes, has year access to the forum and our advice and our consulting in our community. Thanks again, Travis. I can't thank you enough for what you bring to the group and what you bring to our consulting, and we really look forward to the future.
All right, man. No problem. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. It's good
Thank
talking.
you. Peace and love.
All right, everybody.
Peace.
Thanks, everyone.